Tasha had only been at the company for 2 weeks when things started to feel off. She walked in the office that Monday morning wearing a cream-colored blouse, her favorite gold earrings, and a wide smile. It was her way of setting the tone for the week. Look good, feel good, work hard. She had just landed a marketing role at a well-known firm in Atlanta. It was the kind of place with open glass offices, coffee machines that made fancy drinks, and a view of the city skyline from almost every desk. On paper, it was perfect, but the feeling in the air told a different story. When she greeted her team that morning, only one person replied, a quiet morning from a girl named Emily who barely looked up from her laptop. The rest didn't say a word. Tasha tried not to take it personally. Maybe everyone was just busy. Still, she noticed the looks, the glances that lasted a second too long. The way conversations would pause when she walked into the room, only to start again in hushed tones. She shook it off. They don't know me yet, she told herself. They'll come around. Tasha had worked hard to get here. Years of experience, 2 degrees, and a resume that spoke for itself. She knew her worth. But this place didn't feel welcoming. Not yet. During the team meeting that morning, she shared an idea for a client campaign. It was bold, fresh, and backed by real research. Her manager smiled politely but quickly moved on to someone else's idea, something Tasha had said, just less detailed. The team clapped. Her idea had suddenly become someone else's win. She didn't say anything, just wrote it down and nodded quietly. At lunch, she sat at a table near the window, scrolling through her phone and picking at her salad. No one asked her to join their group. No one sat with her. She noticed the same small circle of co-workers laughing together at another table, one of them glancing her way and whispering something with a smirk. Tasha took a sip of her water and kept scrolling. By the end of the day, she felt tired, not from the work, but from the energy it took to stay calm, to keep smiling, to act like everything was normal. As she packed up her things, she paused and looked around the office. She had seen places like this before, shiny on the outside, quiet and cold on the inside. Still, she didn't come this far to back down. She was going to show them what she was made of, whatever it took. But what Tasha didn't know yet was that this place wasn't just cold. It was cruel, and something was about to happen that would change everything. The next morning, Tasha walked into the office early, as usual. She liked getting in before the noise started. It gave her a chance to breathe and plan her day. But as she reached her desk, something was different. Her chair was missing. She looked around, confused. A few coworkers nearby kept typing like nothing was wrong. One of them, Dan, looked up briefly, then went back to his screen without a word. Tasha quietly found a spare chair from the break room and rolled it over. No big deal, she told herself. Maybe housekeeping moved it. She brushed it off, just like she had with the other little things. Like how her coffee mug had gone missing 2 days ago, or how her printed reports never seemed to make it to the meeting room on time, even though she swore she placed them there herself. Or how, last week, someone had taken her lunch from the fridge and left an empty container in its place. None of it was loud. None of it was obvious. But all of it made her feel like she didn't belong. During the morning meeting, she gave another idea. This time, a campaign for a new sports drink brand. She had done her research, pulled market trends, and created a short deck. She spoke confidently, with a smile. When she finished, there was a long pause. Her manager, Paul, cleared his throat and said, "Interesting angle. Let's circle back to that later." But they never did. Instead, Jason, who sat across from her, suggested something almost identical a few minutes later. Paul clapped his hands and said, "Now, that's the kind of thinking we need." Tasha didn't even look surprised anymore. She just nodded, made a note in her notebook, and stayed silent. After the meeting, she overheard 2 coworkers talking near the water cooler. "She's trying too hard," one of them whispered. "It's only been, 2 weeks? She acts like she's running the place already," the other said, laughing. Tasha turned the corner before they saw her and walked to the restroom. She looked in the mirror and took a deep breath. This wasn't her first time being the only black woman in the room. She knew what this felt like. Still, it didn't make it easier. Back at her desk, someone had scribbled on her notepad. The words were smudged, but clear enough to read. slow down, star. She blinked at it. No one looked her way. For a second, she thought about saying something. Maybe going to HR, but what would she say? That her chair went missing and someone wrote a weird message on her notes? No one would take it seriously. They never did until it was too late. So, she sat down quietly, fixed her blouse, and opened her laptop. She told herself she'd just focus on her work. But the storm was only getting started. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. The team was gathered in the conference room for a last-minute brainstorming session. A big client was launching a new campaign, and the pressure was on. Everyone looked tired and restless. Papers were spread across the table, coffee cups in every hand, and the energy in the room felt heavy. Tasha sat near the end of the table, quiet but ready. She had been working all week on ideas, hoping this would be her chance to finally be heard. Paul, the manager, stood in front of the whiteboard, marker in hand. We need something fresh, something that hits hard. Who's got ideas? There was a short silence before Tasha raised her hand slightly. I've got one, she said calmly. Paul sighed. Okay, go ahead. She explained her concept clearly. Targeted digital ads, using real voices from the community, tying the product to real stories. It was emotional, different, and exactly what the client had asked for. When she finished, the room was silent. No feedback, just blank faces. Then Jason, sitting across from her, laughed under his breath. That sounds like a social studies project, he muttered. A few people chuckled. Tasha kept her eyes on Paul, waiting for him to speak up, to defend her, or at least say something. He didn't. Instead, he turned to the board and asked, anyone else? Emily leaned forward. Maybe we go with a more playful tone, like a parody or something. Paul nodded. That's more like it. Tasha leaned back in her chair, trying to hide the sting in her chest. She glanced around the room, then reached for her notebook to write something down. That's when it happened. Dan, who had been drinking a can of Coke during the meeting, stood up quickly. His voice was loud and sarcastic. Oh, wait. Maybe we should all listen to the queen of marketing over there. Before anyone could respond, he tilted the open can just enough and flicked it forward. The Coke splashed straight onto Tasha, her blouse, her notebook, even her phone on the table. Cold, sticky liquid everywhere. The room froze. Someone gasped quietly. No one moved. No one said a word. Paul blinked, looked at Dan, then looked away. Okay, he said slowly, let's take 5. Come back in 10. And just like that, people started getting up, grabbing their phones, walking out, pretending it hadn't happened. Tasha sat still, Coke dripping down her sleeve. Her hands shook slightly as she wiped her notebook with a napkin someone had left behind. No one looked at her. No one offered help. Not even a tissue. She stood up, holding her soaked phone, and walked out of the room without a word. Past the desks. Past the cold stairs. Out the front door. Because she had reached her limit. And what none of them knew was, she wasn't walking away in defeat. She was walking towards something they weren't ready for. Tasha didn't say a word as she walked through the lobby. The Coke had started to dry on her blouse, leaving a sticky patch across her front. Her phone was still damp. Her shoes made soft clicks on the marble floor as she stepped outside into the warm Atlanta air. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just kept walking, slow and calm, like nothing had happened. But inside, something had snapped. She reached her car, a sleek black SUV parked near the front of the building. She sat in the driver's seat, closed the door, and stared at her hands resting on the steering wheel. Everything was silent. The noise from the office, the whispers, the fake laughs, they were all behind her now. After a moment, she picked up her phone and called one person. Hey, she said when he answered. Her voice was calm but tight. I need you to come by my office. There was a short pause on the other end. What happened? She closed her eyes. Someone threw a drink on me during a meeting. Everyone just watched. Another pause. Then a quiet, steady voice replied, I'll be there in 30 minutes. She ended the call and sat back. Her husband, Andre, wasn't just any man. He was one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country. Billionaire, investor, owner of several buildings in the city, including the very one her company worked out of. Most people had no idea they were married. Tasha liked it that way. She never wanted to be treated differently because of who her husband was. She believed in building her own name, her own success. But today was different. Andre had always told her, if anyone crosses the line, let me know. And now he was on his way. Back upstairs, the team had returned to the conference room like nothing happened. No one asked where Tasha went. Dan joked about the Coke being an accident. Paul just nodded and moved on with the meeting. They had no idea what was coming. 30 minutes later, a black car pulled up in front of the building. Andre stepped out, dressed in simple jeans, a fitted gray shirt, and dark sunglasses. He didn't look like a billionaire. He looked like a regular guy, calm, focused, and serious. He walked straight into the building. The front desk staff froze for a second before the building manager rushed over, recognizing him instantly. They greeted him with nervous smiles, asking if he had an appointment. No, Andre said quietly. I'm just here to visit my wife. He was led upstairs without a word. As the elevator doors closed behind him, his expression didn't change. He wasn't angry. He was focused, because what happened to Tasha wasn't just wrong. It was personal, and he was going to make sure everyone understood that. Andre walked through the office doors like he owned the place because, in a way, he did. People looked up from their desks, confused. They didn't recognize him. Just a tall, calm man with a clean look and quiet confidence. He didn't need to say much. His presence did all the talking. The receptionist stood up quickly. Can I help you? Andre smiled politely. No need. I'm heading to the 10th floor. Before she could stop him, the building manager appeared, a little out of breath. Mr. Westbrook, we weren't expecting you today. Andre nodded. I'm not here on business. I'm visiting a tenant. With that, the manager led him to the elevator. No questions asked. Upstairs, the team was still in the middle of their meeting. Paul was drawing something on the whiteboard, while Dan laughed loudly about something no one else found funny. No one noticed the door open at first. Then they saw the building manager walk in, followed by Andre. The room went silent. Paul frowned. Can we help you? Andre looked around slowly, then pointed to the Coke can still sitting on the table. Was this part of the meeting? He asked calmly. No one answered. I'm Andre Westbrook, he continued, and I own this building. More importantly, I'm also Tasha's husband. Gasps filled the room. Paul's face went pale. Someone dropped their pen. Andre walked to the center of the room, hands in his pockets. I don't usually get involved in my wife's work. She's more than capable on her own, he said. But today, something happened that crossed the line. He looked directly at Dan. You threw a drink on her. In front of everyone. Dan shifted in his seat, trying to laugh it off. It was a joke. No, Andre cut in. It was disrespect. And no one stopped you. Not your manager. Not your team. Not even HR. He turned to Paul. You allowed it. And then you walked away like nothing happened. Paul opened his mouth to speak, but Andre held up a hand. Save it. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. This office lease? It's canceled. Effective today. You'll have 2 hours to clear out. Security will escort you after that. Complete silence. Andre took one last look around the room. Some of you laughed. Some stayed quiet. But no one stood up for her. And now, you'll all remember what happens when you forget someone's worth. He turned to leave, then paused. By the way, she didn't ask me to come. She didn't need saving. But I came because she deserved respect. And since none of you could give it, I will. With that, Andre walked out of the room. And this time, no one said a word. As soon as Andre left the room, the silence stayed. No one moved. Paul stood near the whiteboard, frozen, like he couldn't believe what had just happened. Dan slumped back in his chair, the smirk on his face gone. Emily looked down at her notepad, too embarrassed to lift her head. Finally, Paul broke the silence. Okay, let's stay calm. Maybe we can fix this. But Deep down, everyone knew it was too late. Within 15 minutes, security guards arrived on the floor. They were polite but firm, holding clipboards with names and instructions. They didn't yell or make a scene. They simply walked from desk to desk, asking employees to shut down their computers and gather their things. Some of the team members whispered to each other, still in shock. "Did you know she was married to him? I had no idea. This can't be real. We just lost our jobs." Paul tried to speak with the head of security, but they wouldn't let him pass. "Orders from the owner," the guard said. "You'll need to clear your office." In just under an hour, the once busy office was filled with boxes, silence, and stunned faces. Monitors were being unplugged, drawers emptied, chairs pushed aside. No one smiled. No one made jokes. It was over. Downstairs, Tasha sat in her SUV, watching through the glass windows as people left the building one by one. She didn't smile, but there was a quiet peace on her face. Not because she wanted revenge, but because someone finally saw her and stood beside her when it mattered. Andre opened the passenger door and got in. "It's done," he said simply. She looked at him. "You didn't have to do all that." "I know," he replied. "But you've worked too hard to be treated like you don't belong." They sat quietly for a moment before Tasha spoke again. "I kept trying to be quiet, to not make trouble. I thought maybe they'd change." Andre looked at her. "You don't need to shrink yourself for people who are already small." Outside the car, Dan walked past, carrying a box of his things. He glanced at the SUV and realized who was inside. Their eyes met for a second. Then he looked away and kept walking. Emily followed behind him, holding a plant and a keyboard in her arms. She gave a small nod toward Tasha. Maybe it was regret. Maybe it was apology. But it was too late now. As the last employees left the building, Tasha took a deep breath. It wasn't just about the Coke, or the jokes, or the silence. It was about dignity, about being seen. And now, the message was clear. She wasn't alone, and she was done letting people treat her like less than what she was. The next morning, Tasha woke up feeling different. The sunlight slipped through the blinds. The city outside was waking up, but for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel the pressure sitting on her chest. No heavy silence. No forced smiles. No pretending. She made coffee, stood by the window, and just breathed. The phone was already buzzing, calls, messages, emails, but she didn't rush to answer. She needed this moment to herself. Later that day, she sat down at her desk at home. Her laptop screen lit up with messages from former coworkers, strangers, and even a few companies. Some were just shocked by what happened. Others wanted to apologize. A few people she barely knew, sent messages thanking her for standing up. But the most surprising ones came from recruiters. One message read, "We've been following your work and would love to talk about a creative director role." Another said, "Your idea from that meeting was brilliant. We'd love to hear more." Tasha smiled to herself, not because they were reaching out now, but because it reminded her that her ideas had always been good. The room she was in before just didn't know how to value her. Andre walked in with 2 mugs of tea and handed her one. "So," he asked, "what's next?" Tasha looked at the screen, then back at him. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But whatever it is, it'll be mine." She wasn't in a rush. She had time to build something new, something better. As the day went on, she made a list. Not of companies, but of ideas. Projects she wanted to start. People she wanted to mentor. Stories she wanted to tell. She thought about all the others out there like her. The quiet ones. The ones who worked twice as hard for half the credit. The ones that got passed over, overlooked, or pushed aside. "What if we created something for them?" she said out loud, turning to Andre. "Like a program?" he asked. "Or a space," she said. "A company where they don't have to shrink themselves. Where their ideas matter from day one." Andre grinned. "You're thinking big." Tasha leaned back in her chair, holding her tea. "I'm done thinking small," she said. "That chapter's closed." She looked out the window again. A week ago, she was just trying to survive that office. Now, she was planning to build something that could change the game. And this time, no one would be able to take credit for her ideas, talk over her voice, or make her feel like less. The worst moment in that conference room. It had turned into her first real step towards something powerful. Not revenge, not payback, just freedom, and the courage to write her own story from here. 3 months later, Tasha walked through the doors of a new office. This time, it wasn't someone else's company. It was hers. The building wasn't huge, but it was bright, clean, and full of energy. Fresh plants sat by the windows. Framed artwork lined the walls, pieces by young, local artists. The front desk had a simple sign that read, Rise & Co. This was the dream she didn't even know she had until everything fell apart. Tasha walked past the front room, greeting her new team with a warm smile. They were a small group, designers, writers, marketers, all from different backgrounds. Some were fresh out of school. Some had been pushed out of other companies, just like she had. All of them had talent. All of them were ready to build something real. Morning, Tasha, one of the interns said, handing her coffee. Thanks, Maya, she replied, taking the cup. You ready for your pitch later? Maya grinned. Absolutely. Tasha made her way to her office, which had a large glass wall that looked over the shared workspace. No giant desk, no closed door, just a big table, a whiteboard full of ideas, and a couch where team members often came to chat. She sat down, opened her laptop, and smiled at the screen. They had just signed their third client, a well-known fashion brand looking for a campaign with real heart. The brand had come to her team. They said they loved the raw, honest voice of the company. And now, Tasha was leading the project. As the day moved on, her calendar filled up, calls with clients, feedback sessions, lunch with a local youth group she was mentoring. Busy, yes, but this time it felt different. No one here made her feel invisible. No one laughed when she spoke. Everyone had a seat at the table. Around noon, Andre stopped by. He brought lunch, her favorite grilled veggie wrap, and a sweet tea. They sat together in the break room, talking and laughing like two best friends. You did this, he said, looking around. We did this, Tasha replied. But mostly me. Andre laughed. Fair enough. Just then, a young designer rushed over with exciting news. Their first video campaign had just hit 100,000 views online. It was getting shared by influencers and featured in blogs. Tasha stood up and clapped. That's what happens when the right voices lead. As the team cheered, Tasha looked around and felt something deep in her chest. Peace. Not just success, not just respect, but peace. She had been through the fire, the stares, the whispers, the coke on her shirt, the silence. And she turned all of that into something powerful. Not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told to sit down, stay quiet, or be less. Now, she was proof. You can rise, and you can do it with grace, strength, and your head held high.